You're listening to Nutrition Matters podcast with Paige Smathers, registered dietitian nutritionist. Nutrition Matters podcast explores how to approach food and your body in a whole new way. I interview people who share stories and expertise in rejecting diet culture, making peace with food, and discovering a more positive, realistic, and sustainable approach to health and well-being. I'm Paige Smathers, registered dietitian nutritionist, and owner of Positive Nutrition, an in-person nutrition therapy practice in Salt Lake City, Utah. I offer free resources, including this podcast, a blog, and posts on social media. If you're local to Salt Lake City, check out our services and availability for appointments, and keep your eyes out for in-person groups on mindfulness, intuitive eating, body image resilience, and more. Go to positive-nutrition.com and hit subscribe if you'd like to keep in touch. I also offer online courses covering topics like the science of nutrition, mindfulness, and healing your relationship with food. Check those out at positive-nutrition.com/academy. If you like what you hear on the podcast, you can make a difference by leaving a review, sharing with friends and family, or making a donation. Thank you so much for your support. You can also find me on Instagram or Facebook if you'd like to have a little more food for thought at Paige Smathers RD. Thank you so much for listening. Hello and welcome back to Nutrition Matters podcast. My name is Paige and I'm your host, and I'm so excited to share this podcast episode with you, which I recorded with Melissa Toller, who I just absolutely think the world of. She's amazing. In this episode, we talk about her career path and her journey with health and kind of how she's evolved through the years with all of that. It's a really fascinating story. She explains that a little bit more throughout the episode. We also talk about the practice of writing. We really dig into this practice of writing and how it's been a really important part of Melissa's particular journey with her body and with health and with all different types of things that intersect with those themes. So we talk about that today. We talk about some of the practical ways that anyone can start a writing practice. And I really, really loved what she had to say about it. I really appreciated her words here. So Melissa does a great job of introducing herself a little bit further in the episode, but she's just fabulous and wonderful, and I'm excited to share this episode with you. A couple pieces of housekeeping that I do want to share is many of you who have listened to the podcast for a while will probably already know about a workshop that I put on 2 times last year with my friend Noah Rasheta, who is the host of the Secular Buddhism podcast, a really popular podcast about Buddhist principles and ideas. Noah is a friend of mine. He lives close to me, and we put on 2 workshops last year, which we called the Mindful Eating Workshop. And in those workshops, we spent a whole day talking about some of the most important topics within mindfulness and how those topics of mindfulness relate to our relationship with food. They were so fun to put on and just a blast. And now, you know what? Noah's moving. And so we thought, gosh, we should really record this as an online version and have it so that when you move, we can still offer it as an online version. So we have done that, and we are releasing it today, the day that this podcast is being released. So if you want to be able to access the Mindful Eating Workshop, if you're not familiar with Noah's work, go check out his podcast. If you want to dive a little bit deeper into this kind of intersection of mindfulness and our approach to food, check out the Mindful Eating Workshop online course. I have a gift certificate for you for $25 off, which brings the total to $125. We're really trying to make it affordable for people so that it can be a really powerful resource for folks. So you can access that at positive-nutrition.com/academy. And then under the courses heading, just scroll down to the Mindful Eating Workshop and enter the code Nutrition Matters at checkout to get $25 off. And I know that I've learned so much from Noah over the years and just continue to every time we get together. So it's a fabulous resource if you're interested in mindfulness and how that has to do with our relationships with food. Consider checking it out. So again, positive-nutrition.com/academy. And then one other announcement is for any dietitians listening, I do have a live webinar coming up that's worth one continuing education credit. This will be on March 12th at 10 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. You can sign up for this at positive-nutrition.com/academy as well. And this will be a talk that I've given many times now. This is about the art and science of nutrition therapy, incorporating intuitive eating and body positivity into practice. So this is a webinar and training all about how to approach your clients from this perspective of helping them engage in intuitive eating and connecting to their body and body positivity work. So if you're interested in that, or if you're new to this world, it might be a helpful resource for you. If you're listening after March 12th, 2019, you can also access this for continuing education after the fact at that same link positive-nutrition.com/academy. And then everybody listening who might be local to Salt Lake City, just kind of keep your ears out. I will be announcing something really, really exciting for the month of April. I'm going to be doing a live event in Salt Lake City with some people that I think you'll be interested in as well. So keep your ears out. A little teaser for now. But yeah, keep early April sort of open and keep your ears out for something exciting coming up then. All right, now with that, let's get on to talking with Melissa Toller, and I hope you enjoy. Hi, Melissa. Welcome to Nutrition Matters Podcast.
Hey, Paige, how are you?
Good. How's your day going?
Oh, okay. It's Friday,
It's
so
Friday. Yay.
yay.
All right. So I want to just dive in and kind of introduce you a little bit to the audience, first of all, and then kind of dive into your story. So tell everybody who might not already know you, who you are, what you do, kind of briefly, and then we'll dive in.
Sure. So I'm Melissa Toller, and I am a writer and a speaker and teacher, a former health and wellness coach. I'm also a pharmacist. And a lot of my work is about using writing to help us get free from a lot of the toxic messages that we've learned about ourselves and others. So I've written and spoken a lot over the past few years about specifically about dieting and diet culture, and the effect that that has on us as individuals and as a collective. So I'm expanding my work and using writing to do that.
Wow, I bet when you were in school to become a pharmacist, you didn't probably imagine this future, right?
Not at all.
I can't wait to hear about like how that happened for you. That's such an interesting path, and it sounds like you're following your heart and your passions and kind of what just feels right to you.
Oh, yes.
That's what I would guess. Okay, awesome. So tell us about first of all, tell us about why you chose pharmacy school and what that was like, and maybe any relevant stories kind of leading up to that of how you were raised with food and body image, just so that we can kind of paint the context of why you became a health and wellness coach.
Yes. So I became a pharmacist because my parents wanted me to become a doctor and I didn't want to go to medical school. So I thought this was a good consolation prize for them, to be
Did
perfectly
they
honest.
agree?
And I said, oh, well, I might go to medical school after pharmacy school, which I, of course, never did. So, they were ultimately happy with the decision to be a pharmacist. I guess it was close enough. I don't consider myself to be a scientist. There are some people who are they love science and they've
Yeah.
loved science and since they were little. Like that just wasn't me. I've always been, even when I look back in elementary school and middle school and even high school, one of my strengths was writing and performing and speaking. But your parents guide you into a career where you will make money. And so that was how I ended up in pharmacy school. And I don't regret it. It's
Yeah.
been a great career. It's just not my passion.
Yeah. And I love when people model the freedom to change your mind, where you don't, just because you went to school for something doesn't mean that's your life sentence if you're not happy there or if you find that you'd rather do something else.
Yes, absolutely.
That's awesome. Okay, so what about growing up with like what was it like in your home with food and eating and body image? What messages did you soak up as a little one around those things?
Yeah, so food was when I look back, it was just food was a way of being nourished, but also connecting, having family time. We had a lot of big meals, at home. We had a lot of Sunday dinners. Thanksgiving was always a big deal. On Friday nights, we would all go out as a family and have food. So there wasn't a lot of talk of restriction or like delineating healthy or good food from bad food. So, and my mother is a great cook, so we had great food all the time.
It was pretty positive, it
Um,
sounds like.
yeah, it was. I think, where things went awry was around in middle school, around puberty. And that's when a lot of I hadn't noticed that I was, I'd never really paid attention to my body as like an issue or problem or something that needed to be fixed until around puberty. And that was just simply because of messages that I had been getting from fellow classmates in school. And so then it was just at that point where I was like, oh, well, maybe there I need to do something about that. So that's the time that I remember. That's the clearest memory of a shift of not thinking at all about my body other than, getting dressed and just general stuff. But it was around 11 or 12 where it became a problem.
Oh, that middle school time, puberty, so hard.
So hard.
Oh, so how did things progress from there for you?
I think that was the start of a couple decades of being hyper focused on losing weight and being thin and eating the right thing and doing the right exercise. And, I'd always been a child who loved physical activity. Like I would play baseball and basketball and, do a lot of running just for fun. And then, around high school is when it sort of became a thing that I needed to do to now keep my body in looking a certain way. So, it just sort of evolved or spiraled over time where even in my 20s and 30s, it just seemed like I was always trying to lose weight. It
And
was like a,
maybe,
a big part of my life.
yeah. Okay. And were people around you doing the same thing? Was it just kind of so normal that you didn't question it, or were you like kind of feeling like you were swimming upstream with all of that? How did you how did I don't know. I'm just curious if you felt like that was what everybody else was doing or not.
Oh, I definitely felt like that
Yeah.
was what everybody else was doing. It was, it was everywhere. It was in magazines. I was a big reader of 17 magazine back in the day and Self and Shape. So it was all of those messages were sort of like they were in my life on top of the people around me doing the same thing.
Yeah. So it sounds like you didn't really even question it for a while. Like, why am I doing this? What does this mean? What is this about? What are my core beliefs? What ideas am I buying into here or social constructions? Like none of that, did any of that come up for you as you look back kind of in retrospect in those years?
Yeah, I always refer to there were times when I felt like there was a little voice inside saying, like, this can't be it. This can't be the focus of your life forever. But because it was everywhere, I just thought, okay, well, I can't stop because this is what we do, especially as women. This is
Mm,
what I'm supposed to do.
yeah.
But I think there was a smarter, I'm going to call it a smarter part of me that knew better. And it just, that part was like exhausted. And
Yeah, totally.
and it was like we can't continue this forever. We just can't.
Okay, so I'm so interested in that little intuition that kept popping up. I know that you, at some point in your path, became a health and wellness coach. When was this in your journey?
Yes. Okay. So I became a certified health and wellness coach almost 6 years ago in 2013. And the reason for that was 2 years prior to that, I started to do fitness competitions. So I was training for, fitness and figure competitions. And so I just got so obsessed with quote unquote being in shape that I wanted to quote unquote help other people. And so one of the ways that I wanted to do that, at first I was like, oh, I'll be a personal trainer. And then I realized I don't want to do that. And so what appealed to me about being a health and wellness coach was that, the coaching aspect of it. And I think coaching is a very valuable thing. I absolutely believe in it. I liked that aspect of it. And so I decided to be, to get a certification. I took a course for like 6 or 7 months and did all of the tests and got my certification. And, when I first started, I absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved it.
Okay, so can we talk a little bit about why you wanted to do fitness competitions? Just kind of get us
Mhm.
into your headspace there.
So, when I look back on it, there are probably two main reasons. And so one is because I wanted to be thin and fit looking. And I remember when I first reached out to a coach to do this, my first thought was because it was like in April of 2011. And I remember thinking, oh, I can lose enough weight to go to Miami. I had a trip planned to Miami in June. And that was and that I remember thinking that. So that was one of the reasons. Like I could lose. This will probably help me lose weight permanently. The second, though, was I did. I had my father was into bodybuilding when I was little, so he had all these muscle magazines around, and this was also back in the day when those fitness competitions would air on ESPN. And so I used to watch them. And so the performance aspect of it was also appealing to me, being
Okay.
on
Yeah.
stage and um, having an audience. So those were my two main drivers for being in fitness competitions.
Okay. So that drive to be in fitness competitions led to the drive to, you said before, quote unquote, help other people.
Yes.
Um, so why do you use quote unquote help other people? I know why, but just explain that.
Yeah, I think a lot, and I've had this conversation with other people who have become trainers or coaches or whatever. You feel like you have unlocked this big secret. That's what I felt. Like, oh, I've discovered the way to lose weight permanently. So I'm going to help other people do the same. That was my thinking.
And somebody listening might be like, oh, did she discover the secret? So tell me
So
about that.
no, there is no secret. And and we'll probably get into all of what's behind that. But no, there is nothing to unlock or figure out. Like that's what I know now. And there's so much behind the what's the word? There's so much behind the our desire to be thin or fit or in shape that we don't see or realize. And I look back at my writing, both writing that I've published, that's public, and also my own personal writing, and I can see the evolution over the past 5 years of my thought process, from when I was a wellness coach up until now.
Oh, I love that. That's one of and that's what we really want to talk about today is kind of that process of writing and creativity and using your voice through the written word to really kind of unlock and explore your feelings about things. Like how powerful that you can look back 5 years ago and say, "Oh wow, look at all the things that have changed about my approach to all of this." And without
Hmm.
writing it down, you wouldn't necessarily be able to remember that as well at all.
Yes. I mean, and sometimes it surprises me, right? It's last week or a couple weeks ago, you know how Facebook does memories, which is, sometimes can be a great thing, sometimes not.
Yeah.
But this post came up where and I think it was only in 2016, maybe early 2016, where I was kind of just, you know, I was sort of celebrating having been in fitness competitions. Like it was a great thing for me in terms of, not even in terms of the performance, because I did like that aspect of it, but I think the underlying theme of my post was that you don't have to um diet. Like the underlying theme was you don't have to diet to lose weight, but losing weight is a good thing and something we should do. Like that, you know what I mean? That was the theme of that post just 3 years ago. And I actually shared it with a dietitian friend of mine, and um, I'm going to meet up with her next week, and we're going to chat about it because I thought it was. I mean, I remember writing it, but I was just like, man, this was only in 2016. So yeah, it was
Yeah,
wild.
so for someone listening who's like new to this world, they might be confused. Like, what do you mean? What's wrong with saying that? Or why are you implying that there was something bad there? What do you break it down a little
Hmm.
bit for someone who's new to this stuff?
Yeah. So this was also the big thing for me, right? Because I, as a health and wellness coach, I went from helping people lose weight, so selling weight loss, but then I did this, what people call non-diet weight management. So still focused on losing weight. And now I realize how harmful that is for a variety of reasons. I think at the core, what that says is that there's something wrong with bodies that are large or fat. And even using the word fat is like shocking to people. Um, but it's harmful to people, to especially to women, to say that there's something that you should change about your body and you should always be focused on it. And there's another layer of conflating that with being healthy and prioritizing quote unquote health and the way that health is defined. And now I notice that using words like healthy and well are being used to talk about weight loss. And so I have a fundamental belief that we don't need to change our bodies for anything, right? I think and the underlying message behind weight loss is that there's value or people who are thinner or in shape or more fit are more worthy than those who are not. There's a theme of um, only certain bodies deserve to be seen and exist. And once I was able to make that connection, through the help of people like Sonia Renee Taylor and other writers and activists, once I was able to make that connection, it just became really clear to me that that wasn't anything that I wanted to be offering to people.
You can't unsee that, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I've talked to a lot of other guests about this, but I'd really love your input here. So, I think all of us in this space who are advocating for um, just freeing yourself from the idea that weight loss is your only purpose and being able to just engage in your health and well-being in a way that feels right to you if you choose to engage in your health and well-being and not to manipulate your body. I think we've all gone through an evolution ourselves personally and professionally because this isn't necessarily easy to come to. It's not necessarily what you learn in school or coaching programs or whatever else. So, as you have been out there publicly, sort of with your writing and with your marketing for your business and all of that, and as you've evolved, How do you feel when you see a post from 2016 saying stuff that maybe you wouldn't say today? Are you, I guess what I'm trying to know is like, do you own that? Or are you like, oh, I feel ashamed of that? Or like, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, so the way I feel about it now is like the post that I saw from 2016, I'm kind of shocked by it. That's one. I'm not ashamed of it. I think
Yeah.
because I am someone who absolutely believes that, we have been brainwashed in a number of different ways about how we value and devalue certain bodies, not just for size, but skin color, physical ability, gender. Like, I believe that there is a significant unlearning and relearning that we have to do, and that is difficult and it's a process. So when I look back at stuff that I've written or even videos from 2014, 15, and 16, I acknowledge that as part of my process of unlearning. Like
Yeah,
it's great for
totally.
me to see what I believed back then and how that has evolved over time.
Yeah, I love that. I don't think that anybody is supposed to like keep the same opinions and the same approach and the same language. I think we're all learning and trying to do better and learning from each other, hopefully. And it would be silly to ask someone to not speak differently in 2019 than 2013, right? I would hope to
Absolutely.
see change and evolution. So,
Yes.
and I also think we're asking, people listening to this podcast or our clients or the people that we're working with, we're asking them to embrace this shift and embrace this evolution. And if we can't model that, how are they supposed to know that that's okay? You know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I also, one of the things I like to reiterate is that there is no like destination to arrive at, right? I
Yes.
still have so much to unlearn and just deprogram from, right?
Yes.
So I don't feel like I've arrived at this place where I can just come and, educate the masses on.
That's a little bit of an uncomfortable proposition, right? Like, oh, now that I'm
Yes,
so
I don't want to be
enlightened.
there. I don't want that.
Yeah.
I enjoy the process. I mean, I don't always enjoy it, but I understand that the process of unlearning is a necessary one. And so I'm committed to it on a daily basis. And I know, in 2025 when I look back at stuff that I've written this year, I may be shocked, you know.
And that's okay. And that's
That's
good.
okay.
And that's progress. And that's,
Yes.
yes, I love that. And I just wanted to make that point so that people listening just know that everybody's shifting and changing and evolving as we go. And yeah, and like you said, there is no destination here. We're all just continuing to wrestle with this stuff and do our best.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's awesome. Okay, so now that we've sort of built the structure of kind of what happened sort of surface level in your life, tell me about kind of your process. I know that your big thing right now is your writing. So how did you go from pharmacist to fitness competitions to health and wellness coach to writing? And yeah, just talk about that in general and I'll probably ask follow-up questions.
Yeah, I think I mentioned earlier, I don't think I ever thought of myself as a writer, but when I look back in to middle school and high school, like I took writing classes. I remember a writing class, I forgot what it was called, that I absolutely loved when I was in 10th grade. And, I was really good at it. I had written essays and research papers in middle school. So writing was my strength, but it wasn't something that I did outside of school. And it wasn't until, I had started a blog when I started doing fitness competitions. So then that was sort of my reintroduction to writing outside of like school or outside of work. And I loved it and I thought I was good at it. And then in 2014, I decided to use writing as a way to process some, just thoughts like cultural messages around relationships and sex. That's how I'd started. I was just going to write for myself, do a daily practice of 20 minutes with a timer and some music and coffee in the morning, and
Oh, that's so
just
dreamy. I love that.
was super dreamy. And it was like, it started in November of 2014. So I would wake up like at 6. So the sun wouldn't really be out yet. It was just like this super peaceful time. And I would just write for 20 minutes. And it started a daily-ish practice. It hasn't been consistently daily, but a regular practice of writing. And over time I was like, I would love for people to take people through a process of using writing to kind of peel back some beliefs and thoughts that they have about different things. And then I wanted to combine it with the work that I was doing with anti-diet work and bodies and all of that stuff. So that's how my writing class, Write to Get Free, came about in 2017. Yeah,
Okay. My
2017.
brain is buzzing. I have so many thoughts. So let's dive in. Let's dig into this. For one of the things you just said that really resonated with me is this idea of really trying to redefine dieting outside of the context of school. I think that so many adults just think, oh, writing was such a painful process and in college and I'm not good at it. So, like, that's just not for me. And I get where people might be coming from. There's a lot of pressure with school to get the right grade and to say what the instructor wants you to say, yada, yada, yada. But I think that there is real power in reclaiming writing as like a really beautiful creative outlet outside of the context of school. Because when it's for you,
Mm,
then you're free, right?
yes, yes. It's actually a really beautiful gift to yourself, right? The words don't have to be spelled correctly. The sentence structure doesn't have to be right. There don't have to be commas where you just write. And I have had so many aha moments, like during the actual writing that I capture in the writing. Like I'll have an aha and I'm like, oh my God, I never thought of it that way. And I'll capture it. Like it's my brain on paper.
Oh, that is so beautiful. I know what you mean. And this is like something that I want to do more of. And I just, yeah, anyway, so this is really resonating with me so much. Tell me about like nuts and bolts. Do you just hop into like a Google Doc and just like talk about your day or talk about what's on your mind? Or do you write, actually physically write in like a journal? Or what does it look like on a practical level for you?
Yeah, I started using Evernote, and I still use Evernote, and I have over 1,000 files in there. And I sometimes I'll write by hand, like it's hard to explain, but sometimes I have a craving to use a pen and a piece of paper, but most of my writing has been done on my laptop in Evernote, and I used to start with prompts and then just write from there. But there were days when I didn't have a prompt and it would just be a stream of consciousness. And I would just write until the timer went off. Um, yeah.
So you know that feeling, Melissa, when stuff is swimming around your brain and it you just feel so lost and confused and discouraged and all those things. And then someone gives you the gift of being able to verbalize and just talk it out and then you're like, "Oh, well when I say it out loud, that actually doesn't make sense or that's not really what I think or in one way or another you gain some clarity." Do you feel like that's what writing can do too?
Absolutely. I think writing can help you because I don't know, I'm a person who's all over the place. Like I have so many thoughts going on about different things, and writing helps me to focus and just to be clear about important things that I'm thinking about. I'll write when I'm confused about something, a decision that I need to make, getting clear on what it is that I want for my life or my business or what have you. So writing does help me to just put things into perspective. Um, Yeah, that's what I love about it because it helps clear my mind, which is sometimes
Yeah.
a little jumbled.
Like just kind of get it down, like get it out of your mind and onto paper, and then there's some clarity.
Yes, and no judgment also. Just
That's
this is what it
critical.
is.
I think that's why people don't like writing, to be honest. I think that they're so used to writing being this performative task of getting an A that it gets in the way of you being able to start because you feel paralyzed by the pressure of being perfect, you know? So when you write for yourself or when you write outside of the context of school, I think that you can find so much more, yeah, freedom. I think there's no other word for it other than you get to just do what you need to do, right for you.
Yeah, freedom is such a great word because, and I sometimes get caught up in because I do write for my blog and I write publicly. There sometimes I do, the perfection bug seeps in and it can stop the flow of words. So I have to do some work around, this writing is just for me. That's what I'm writing this for. It's not to be seen, it's not to be critiqued by me or anyone else. It's just for me to process and to get these things down on paper. So I still struggle with, you know, um, the whole perfection and making sure that the sentences are right and does this make sense and all this other
Yeah,
stuff.
which when you're writing for a broader audience is a good thing to do to make sure that your point is getting across. But yeah, there is a balance to be struck where it's still a flow but also makes sense, right?
Yes. Yes.
So tell me, okay, so I was actually wondering this while you were talking initially about your writing. Um, so in the realm of positive psychology, they talk about flow, like being in a flow state as being or finding things that help you find your flow, being a really important part of um, living a life with like in good mental health. So do you feel like this is one of those things for you where you're able to just flow?
Yes. Yes. And that's one of the reasons why I limit my time to 20 minutes. Right. I have learned that I am not a person who can block out 20 or 2 hours and just write. Like that has never happened for me. So when I'm focused and I know there's a timer, and then also helps when I have music, I can just get into a groove where I'm just writing. And what's interesting is I must like when I go back and read some of the stuff, like I have no memory of even writing it. You know what I mean? Like I'm just in this zone and words are coming out and yeah, so I am in a flow state for like 20, 25 minutes on most days when I'm writing.
I love that idea that the time limit helps you kind of just let everything go and be present. Whereas if maybe if it was longer, you'd feel like, oh, well, I gotta do this and the to-do list and breakfast and thinking about all the things of your
Yes.
day. But where this is just enough to get into that state, but it's not too much where you wander or where you lose focus or where you feel pressure.
Yes, it's for me it's feeling pressure to fill up all of that time. And to be perfectly honest, I have written more words in 20 minutes than I probably could ever in 2 hours because I would get distracted. I'd be getting up, looking at Facebook, daydreaming. Like when I know there's a timer going, then there's a need for me to get the words out versus having a whole lot of extra time.
You're speaking to my soul. This, so you talked about that little voice that was like, "Hey, maybe there's more to life than dieting." I've had that little voice with writing, with exactly what you're talking about, and I've tried, I've made efforts, and what happens in my house on a very practical level is I get up early and then my dog wags his tail. He's huge and he like wakes up my kids. So then I'm awake with two kids on my lap trying to write. And it's like, yeah, okay, never mind. I'll just stay in bed. So I want to find a way to do this. And anyway, it's just speaking to me because I have had this sense of, man, I need to start making like having a writing practice because I think there's so much really cool stuff that can come from that.
Yeah, it just feels very nourishing to me. And my writing practice honestly has evolved. So, when I started, I would write in the morning, and that was when I didn't have a full-time job. I had my business, so I had that time in the morning to like luxuriate on my sofa with coffee and music. But now it has evolved to writing at night, and I actually call it late night write. And I have a Spotify playlist with songs, and I make a whole like production out of it. It just feels, I think people need to do what they need to do, but it makes me feel like I'm taking time for myself. So it feels less like an obligation and more like a treat.
Well, that principle right there I think is so powerful in so many ways. Like if writing feels like a chore, you're probably not going to do it.
Mm-mm.
Same with like cooking dinner or whatever else task we have in our day. If we can make it such that we look forward to it with music or a podcast or a candle or something that just like is something you look forward to, that is a really good way to keep doing that behavior that you want to keep doing.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So I didn't prep you for this, so if nothing comes to mind, just feel free to say, but I'm curious about this process of writing and this practice that you have engaged in for many years now. You've mentioned that you've had lots of moments where you're like, "Whoa, aha," and I had no idea that I could even word it that way or that that's what I felt. What are some of the top sort of highlights of things that like epiphanies you've had? If you're willing and able to share, I know some of this is probably really personal, but I'd be really interested to know what you've uncovered in the process of your writing.
So I've had a lot of ahas around when I first started writing about relationships and sex, just things that I used to think about what I should do and what I should expect
Those
in
shoulds.
relationships. Yes.
Yeah.
And so I remember writing about this the guy that I was dating, and just some thoughts around what I was, um, how do I say, what I was offering up, like in terms of what I was expecting, what I thought he was expecting from me, and that I was giving, but it didn't take into consideration what I wanted. And when I was writing about that, I remember it was sort of like an aha to me, like, oh my God, this isn't what I want, but I'm giving this because I think this is what he expects.
Mm.
So, one that was one of the big ahas that I had in my writing.
And that seems to be so applicable to the body image, the food realm too, like all of these social constructions that we buy into
Yes.
without even
Yes.
realizing it, thinking we should
Yes.
act this way, but never really questioning, wait, do I want that?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's what do I want? And so, one of the things that I realize, and I always say this when I'm talking about Right to Get Free, is that writing can help us hear our own voice. So that's what it
Oh,
is. It's that little voice that's coming out in the writing that's like, holy crap, I didn't know that this is what I thought. Um, yeah, it allows, at least it allows me to differentiate between the cultural messages and what I want to believe is true for myself. And that can be very difficult to do because cultural messages around bodies, around food, around relationships, around sex are so prominent, and they're everywhere that you don't know what's your belief and what you've been told is your belief. You don't know what you want versus what you've been told that you want and what you should desire.
oh, that is so true. Wow. What you just said hit me so hard. Writing can help us hear our own voice. That is so true. And I think now more than ever, we need to hear our own voices because there are so many voices competing for our attention.
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yes.
And we're wise. That's my fundamental belief is that like if we can pay attention to our own voices and our own inner wisdom, we will do okay. And taking into account what other people say and yeah, like learning from science or from
Hmm.
the best that human beings have to offer with their voices, but it does come back to you, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, I think that's important too, to take into account, um, you know, I- to take into account what other humans are saying and offering up, and then just assessing, like, does this work for me or not? I think it's just really important to see the overall cultural message that tells people, and specifically certain people who are in marginalized bodies, that you cannot have what you want or need unless you conform and assimilate. You are not worthy or valuable, deserving of respect and dignity unless you assimilate. And when you really think about it, it's not, none of that is true. We're all worthy regardless of those things. But the messages tell us something to the contrary. And so we believe those things about ourselves, but we also believe them about other people. And the result, I feel, is this immense disconnection from ourselves and from our fellow human beings, which is um, just awful and unnecessary. And so, one of the things that writing has done for me is to help me reconnect with myself, reclaim the relationship with myself, but also just reconnect with other humans and seeing the beauty in body diversity. Um, it's just been like this amazing thing. And at times it is hard and it's uncomfortable and it's enraging, but there is this freedom to be able to see people in their full humanity and to reconnect with our own.
Well, if you think about human beings as a species and as creatures, we are so social.
Hmm.
We need connection. It's not just like, if you have time for it, like sure, try to do that. No,
Yeah.
it's absolutely foundational and critical for us to thrive. And I love what you're saying so much. This is like I'm just anyway, you are speaking to my soul. This is so awesome. So so there's so much noise, there's so many voices competing for our attention, and your point with this whole idea of writing to get free is this is how you can sit and hear your own voice and make sense of all the things swirling around in your brain, or keep it really messy and let it just be messy. That's fine too, because it's just for you. Um, and along the way, you're going to learn a lot about what you really think is true for you and maybe even just what your truth is, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And I tell my clients this all the time when a question I get very often is, well, how do I deal with people who disagree with me or with people who don't like the concept of intuitive eating or don't like the concept that I'm not trying to intentionally manipulate my body? Like, how do I live life with people who disagree with that? And you know, we often explore the question and kind of why you're asking that, what that's about. But a lot of what we come down to together is we've got to come back to what, like your own truth. What's your truth around
Yes.
this stuff? How can you center around what you need for you and what's true for you? But then what people say is, well, I don't even know what's true for me.
Hmm.
And so
Hmm.
your point is, hey, why don't you consider making writing a part of your day, a part of just like brushing your teeth, like just one of the things you do for 20 minutes and see what you might be able to explore and uncover about that truth.
Yes. And that is, this unlearning process is scary and confusing and enraging and all of those kind of what we would consider negative, because it's also, it's because we have to live with people, either friends, family, coworkers, who aren't there, who aren't in that same place, right? And how And so it can be uncomfortable because it can make it has caused rifts in relationships. And as you were saying that, I was thinking, you stand firm in what is true for you. Like, right? I firmly believe that nobody is more worthy than another, right? I firmly believe that. And so I'm just very clear with people that that is a fundamental belief for me. And so as a result, there's certain things that I'm not going to do, not going to say, and not going to tolerate. I'm just very clear.
So I wanted to also circle back to another point you made about how writing can help you uncover kind of what you want to keep and what you want to maybe either put on a shelf or even just kind of let go of, as you're sort of rebuilding your core beliefs or really uncovering what's my truth. It can sort of feel like a process of demolishing a building as a metaphor and then like picking up each brick separately and saying, hey, do I want to keep this? Do I want to throw it aside in a different pile? Or do I want to put it back into the building? Or do I want to just throw it completely away? That's a really painful process, but I think people need permission to not when you're exposing yourself to frameworks like, let's just say, intuitive eating, since I'm a dietitian and that's kind of my wheelhouse is talking about nutrition related things. Sometimes what gets people tripped up is they think, okay, as I'm reading this book or as I'm immersing myself in this world, I need to rebuild my building like with every single thing that I read. And I need to follow this to a T, and I need to, check off the list of what it means to be an intuitive eater, let's say. And one of the things that I feel like I'm on a mission to do is to give people permission to take what works and leave what doesn't,
Mm-hmm.
because intuitive eating or any other framework like that is no different from dieting if we feel like we need to check stuff off our list, right?
Yes, yes,
And so
absolutely.
if we write, my point with saying all this is maybe writing as we're reading or as we're immersing ourselves in a new way of thinking about food, maybe that helps us kind of figure out how we want to rebuild and what makes sense for us and what we may maybe want to leave, right?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And one of the something I was thinking about when you started with that was, I started something called the Disentanglement Project, where my goal was to really just pick apart the ideas that have been instilled in me that tell me that something is wrong with me. Like, that was my starting point. what what are the things that tell me that I am somehow disposable, unworthy, not deserving of respect? And when you really sit down and write it, it can be a really long list. So that was my starting point, and that helped me to determine like what worked for me and what didn't. It was those helped me that helped me to determine which bricks I would take away from the house. Like this, the pulling apart of the machine. And that I found that to be really helpful, because I feel like the cultural messages, that's one of the things that the cultural messages do. They make us feel badly about ourselves and about other people. Like, what are the things that I think that keep me separated from people, that make me mistrust people? And so that was sort of my
So
starting
what you're
point.
saying is kind of reflecting first on the question, what disconnects me from myself and from others, pretty much.
Yes. Yep.
Ah, that's so amazing. This is so brilliant. I love everything you're saying so much. What do you wish people knew about bodies and about food and about movement and about basically themselves and their worth? I know you've already said this pretty much, but I kind of want to give you the chance to sort of share what you've learned in a nutshell about those topics.
I think most of what we've been told and sold is not true, and is actually the source of a lot of pain and anxiety and stress for us.
Yeah, that's so true. So, unlearning unlearning is more of a way to describe what we're doing rather than learning something brand new, right?
Hmm.
We're
Hmm.
unlearning all of that. Oh, okay. So, how do people join your program? And tell us more about what the program is like with Right to Get Free.
Yeah, so Right to Get Free is I actually have two levels, sort of an intro level, which is 4 weeks for people who are kind of new to body acceptance. And then there's a level two where we go, it's 6 weeks and we go deeper into the messages that we've learned, not just about our own bodies, but about other people, because I firmly believe that liberation from body oppression is for everyone. And it's oftentimes, the work in mainstream body positivity can seem very singular and focused on the person. So we take a deeper, broader look at people in general in Right to Get Free in the 6 week course. And it's really just weekly reflective questions and prompts with different themes, like themes about truth and pleasure and visibility. So I try to get really specific on topics that are related to body acceptance as in general.
And is the goal to kind of help build some momentum around this practice of writing?
Yes, it's to build some momentum around the practice of writing, but it's also to, like I said earlier, to kind of put your brain on paper to see what it is that you believe. Um, and go from there. Like I want, I'd like people can do ultimately what they want, but I want people, and I even asked toward the end, like after this is over, what are you going to do? Like, is this where it ends for you, or do you continue this unlearning process? So I want people to just think differently and use writing to do that.
And how do they find the program?
Yep, it's on my website at melissatoller.com. You'll see Right to Get Free. It's right on the header.
Okay, and I'll link to that in the show notes too so that people can check it out.
Thank you.
Yeah, any other way you want people to keep in touch with you? You're on Instagram? I think you're on Twitter, right?
Yes, I'm mostly on Facebook and Instagram. Twitter sometimes is, oof,
Yeah, I don't
it's a
even have a
lot.
Twitter for that reason. I'm scared of it.
Yeah,
Uh, Melissa,
I
this is.
love
Oh,
I
go
love
ahead.
Instagram
Okay.
the most.
Facebook and Instagram. Awesome.
Yes.
Melissa, this has been such a joy. Like, seriously, I just have loved every word that's come out of your mouth. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us in this process of writing and why you found it valuable. I think this is going to resonate with a lot of people. So, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thank you for the invitation, and I enjoyed our conversation today.